My name is Kirsten Bachman, and I'm giving this presentation as part of a course assignment for a class that I'm taking called Teaching of Psychology. And the title of my proposed experiment is Supportive Email and Student Motivation in the Classroom. So let's begin with a little bit of background. The level of control that instructors have on their students' performance, and particularly motivation, is not very high. And this is important because instructors try to do everything they can to facilitate the learning of their students. Student motivation, however, previously has been largely deemed as out of the instructor's control, and students either have it or they don't, and there's not much that instructors can do to enhance this motivation. However, new research that has recently come out suggests otherwise. Specifically, first impressions within the classroom are important to student motivation, and that being said, if a student tends to like an instructor, then their motivation is likely to be high. These first impressions are largely based on face-to-face interactions. However, some research has suggested that online interactions that develop first impressions are more intense reactions than later face-to-face interactions that have been shown in some studies. The current study that I'm going to be proposing is based on previous work that was conducted by Legg and Wilson in 2009. And these researchers sent out one email to students prior to the class starting, specifically 1 week prior to the class. The content of the email was the same for each student, even though the email was sent out individually by the teaching assistant, so that the instructor who had designed the experiment was blind to knowing which students in the section had received the email and which had not. And this was because all of these students were in the same section of the course. Legg and Wilson note that there were gender differences in the perception of how the email was taken by students. Specifically, females reacted more positively to the email, whereas males felt that the overuse of exclamation points made the professor seem unapproachable and somewhat of an airhead, so this was a limitation of their design. However, the researchers measured attitudes both toward the instructor and toward the course, as well as student motivation, and they measured these on Likert scales. The results of the study indicated that there was an increased positive evaluation of the instructor for those students who received the email prior to the beginning of class than those who did not, as well as enhanced student motivation in the course for those students who received the email versus those who did not. So this leads me to the hypotheses that I have for the proposed design. First, I believe that more emails than just one, with content that's diverse, will actually enhance the motivation even further than the levels that Legg and Wilson found in their study with only one email. And I also want to study long-term retention, as this is a very important factor for education. Instructors ultimately hope that their students walk out of their class with knowledge that they did not have previously, and while motivation is important, it's also arguably more important that students leave the course with that information intact. So the design of the study that I'm proposing is that I want to utilize 3 different sections of the course Introduction to Psychology. And this is because I want to use conditions that have either 1, 2, or 3 different emails. And these sections will be randomly assigned to be in each of these conditions. So for the section of the course that only has 1 email, it will be very similar to the design that Legg and Wilson employed. However, that email will be sent out 2 weeks prior to the beginning of class, and it will include such information as the required text and just a general welcome to the students to the course. Then a second section of this same course will receive a second email 1 week prior to the start of classes, and that email will detail how the instructor intends to teach within the course. And this will include such things as PowerPoint presentations, additional research articles, video clips, and in-class discussions. Then the third section will receive a total of 3 emails, the first 2 as previously described, and a final email that just details that the course starts the next day because it will be sent 1 day prior to the beginning of class, and that the instructor hopes that the students look forward to the class and that she's looking forward to a great semester with them. As Legg and Wilson did, I intend to include surveys of the attitudes both toward the instructor and the overall course, as well as their levels of motivation. And these will be assessed on Likert scales for statements such as, I would recommend this instructor to a friend, rate the overall effectiveness of your instructor. The instructor is likely to motivate me to do my best work. And these will be on scales from 1 to 5, from 1 being strongly disagree to 5 being strongly agree. I also want to include several additional statements for the students to respond to, including, I think I am going to enjoy this course, and the instructor's style makes this course valuable. These surveys will be conducted at 3 different times throughout the semester, and the first time will be during the first week of classes, the second time will be at midterms, and the third time will be during the final week of classes in the semester. As mentioned previously, I'm also interested in long-term retention, and to this end, I intend to administer an alternate version of the final exam for the course at 2 separate time periods, and one of these would be 1 semester after the students have completed the Introduction to Psychology course, and the other one would be 1 year later to determine if they are indeed withholding that information. So the results that I expect from this proposed experiment are that all 3 of the groups will show enhanced motivation from the beginning of a semester to the end of it in terms of their overall motivation to succeed in the course. And now I want to discuss per group what I'm expecting. So for the condition that has 1 email, I expect to replicate the results that Legg and Wilson found, specifically that motivation is enhanced as well as the attitude toward the instructor and the course. For the group that receives 2 different emails, I have a question mark here because this could actually be the group that demonstrates the best motivation toward the course and the instructor, as well as the highest levels of retention. And that is because 1 email has been shown to enhance it, but perhaps the second email will cement that effect in terms of the first impression. It'll make it stronger, and so that's why they would demonstrate the best results. However, for the 3 emails, I'm a little unsure about this group. This could be the best or the worst, or it could be somewhere in between. And the reason for this is that 3 emails would obviously demonstrate more effort on the part of the instructor, but as with the men in Legg and Wilson's study who deemed the instructor as somewhat of an airhead, it's possible that 3 separate emails, all within a 2-week period prior to the class, could be deemed as somewhat of an annoyance or a nuisance to students, and therefore result in the least positive attitudes toward both the course and the instructor, as well as decreased motivation to succeed in the course, which would also indicate lower levels of retention in terms of the long-term memory that I'm assessing. So if I find the results that I'm expecting, I would obviously be demonstrating, as Legg and Wilson did, that motivation indeed can be influenced by the instructor, and much as people previously thought that it's largely out of the instructor's control, that would be proven to be largely false. I would replicate the results that Legg and Wilson provided in their 2009 study, such that student motivation and attitudes toward the course and instructor can be enhanced via an email that is sent welcoming students to class prior to the beginning of that course. And my big contribution in terms of the proposed study would be if I were able to show that long-term retention is increased via these emails. And that would suggest that email can indeed facilitate memory through the enhanced motivation and overall positive attitude toward the instructor and course. This study, like any other, is not without its limitations, and one of these includes that I'm not randomly assigning students to sections of the course that they would be enrolling in. This might be a problem in the sense that it's possible that students who are highly motivated, highly determined, and would be quote-unquote the best students might enroll for the same section, and my design doesn't control for this. So that might alter the results because the effects might seem to be from the number of emails that they receive when it would actually be due just to the fact that the students are very bright and determined to begin with. Additionally, the email content is very subjective, and as Legg and Wilson's study showed that the number of exclamation points mattered, particularly to the male participants, it's possible that any content that I would devise would not be without its subjectivity and could present some sort of third variable which I'm not controlling for. And this leads to the idea that in the future, if this research would be continued, there would need to be some sort of validity of the content of an email. So if I found that one of the emails that I created was particularly effective at increasing student motivation and also the long-term retention particularly, then it would be important that future research utilize the same content so that we reduce this third variable issue. So in conclusion, the implications of the proposed study would be that not only the motivation would be enhanced, as Legg and Wilson previously found in their study, but also long-term retention rates can be increased in terms of what the students leave a course with simply by providing 1, 2, or possibly 3 emails prior to the beginning of the class. This is a very easy to implement strategy. Emails are composed on a daily, sometimes hourly basis, and it seems that instructors would greatly benefit from composing any number of emails, and I would be willing to bet that they would be more than happy to do so if it would increase their students' performance. So a welcome email would provide 2 things. First of all, it would share course information, so we can't go wrong there. And then, as Legg and Wilson found, it would increase motivation, and also students then leave with the course content, which is ultimately the goal of the enterprise of education overall. So that concludes my discussion of my proposed study. I want to thank you for your attention, and if you have any questions, please email me at ksanfus@ou.edu. Thanks.